Hey everyone, I'm Shebs-Clips. I am a travel broadcaster, writer, and the editor of the magazine Voyager's Voice. I'm going to be discussing with you on how to save money when it comes to traveling solo. I'm here to tell you it's totally achievable even on a tight budget. Solo travel doesn't have to be emptying your bank account. In fact, with a bit of savvy planning, it can be surprisingly affordable. This isn't just for backpackers roughing it out. These tips are for anyone who wants to maximize their travel experience without overspending. Whether you're planning to get away for the weekend or multi-month adventure, I've actually done it over my 20 years of traveling. So here are some of my tips that I think will help you.
You can support the channel by heading over to www.shebsthewonder.com. You'll be able to see the store tab, which you can hover over to and click. You can then buy various items from t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, even water bottles and phone cases. If you have any questions, you can send me a message through the contact tab.
Budget travel for me starts from home. It's not when you're out in the destination that you're looking to go to. What do you do at home? Are you spending a lot of money on clothes, online shopping, going out all the time with your friends? When I knew I was going to New York, this is going back 10, 12 years ago, 13 years ago to be precise, I think it was, I absolutely made sure I had enough money to travel out there first. However, also when it came to spending. So my life just completely changed for 3-4 months. Or maybe less than that, maybe 2-3 months. It was buying the necessities, obviously food, transportation. Do I really need to go here? Do I really need to go out there? And I just really lived for that moment. And I think delaying, I call it like the delaying your gratification. You're going to be enjoying something that you've dreamt of. And New York was something, a place, a destination that I dreamt of as a kid. So I literally just, as I said, the bare minimum, like not going out with friends, and if I did, I wouldn't spend too much, and that way I was able to save more money. So then when I was in New York, I was able to splash out slightly more. And I think that's really, really important, because then you can pay for a hotel instead of paying for hostels or couch surfing. I think that's really, really important. So your lifestyle at home is a big starting point. That's where it all begins. If you can get that right, that's step one done. Transportation to the airport is really, really important as well. My local airport is Manchester Airport, which is an international airport from where I live. Sometimes I have to go down to London for certain flights. So if you can get someone to maybe take you to the airport, usually they don't charge me for gas or petrol, but that's one way of first saving money, because I worked out when I have, depending on your flight sometimes, because if your flight's in the middle of the morning, you have to take a taxi. I've sometimes spent $150, maybe $200 taxi there and back when I've gone to the airport and then when I come back, because of the timings. If you can find a way to save money there, that's a lot of money that you can spend on food when you're out in your destination or hotels. I sometimes also book coaches and trains in advance, and with tickets here in the UK, for example, you can book a month in advance on returns. So you're spending something like $10, maybe $20, and that's a massive save, because you can then, as I said, take that money and spend it on your travels. Now that you have an idea in terms of how to live your life at home before you travel, as I said, you can save yourself a lot of money and going to the airport and back, as you can save a lot of money there. Let's start with the biggest money saver, which is where to book your flights. Flights can be very pricey, but flexibility is your superpower. If you can go traveling during a time of the year where it allows you to be in the off season, that will be a massive saver, because a lot of the flights are very expensive during peak time. So peak times in the UK, in the US, will be around about June till the end of August because of the school holidays. You can obviously avoid Christmas time as well. If you can avoid those time of periods, or any time when there's no school around, that is going to be the most expensive times, because everyone's out, people are going to be taking their kids. So if you can manage that, if your work allows it to, that's the first starting point. There are many different apps to use to book your flights. Obviously the days of going into a travel agent to book your flights are long gone. Of course you can still do that, but they usually take a commission. Booking through Skyscanner, which is the one I use, has saved me thousands of dollars over the years. And you can book single flights, you can book return flights, you can book multiple flights. And this is the real key to it. So if you're going on a long trip away and you've got an idea of multiple destinations, for example, when I went on my trip back in 2018, I went from Europe through to Central America, then through to South America, then back to Asia. Well, actually it was the Middle East or Asia, and then I went to finish off my trip in India and China. I had to do multiple because that was the only way I was going to be able to save myself money. And I knew the time span. Obviously, if you're traveling on a budget and you're traveling on a solo trip and you don't know how long you're going to be away for, single flights are the best way to do it, because you save yourself a lot of money, and then you can find ways to go to your next destination by booking another single flight. But if you're like me, have a rough idea of exactly what you're going to do, then you can book those multiple flights. Multiple flights will save you a lot of money. As I've saved, as I said to you, thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars over the years. If you book a return flight, for example, if you were going to New York and you wanted to go from London to New York and you booked a return flight, that sometimes is a cheap way to do it as well, because I've noticed if you book sometimes multiple flights, then it can be slightly more expensive. So if you booked a return there and then booked a destination from New York to, let's just say if you were going to Costa Rica, which is another thing that I did back in 2021 during the time of the pandemic, and which by the way was really cheap. I booked a return, and then where I was going to America, so I booked a return from New York, but then I booked a flight from New York to Costa Rica, and it worked out a lot more cheaper. So that's something to think about. That's a way to do it, but depends on the destination. America is always going to be slightly more expensive, but if you go to other parts of the world, it's a lot more cost effective in that respect. The other thing you could also consider is, if you're going for a destination, think about layovers. If you can make a journey slightly longer instead of doing a direct flight, that will save you a lot of money. I've not particularly done this over the years, but done it a few times because I knew, particularly during the time after the pandemic where everything hiked up and I couldn't get a cheap ticket anywhere, and that was a problem within the industry. So I managed to sort of go to Nepal, and I did an indirect flight, and it was a lot cheaper than flying directly. And it was just, I don't know what happened at that time of the year, but that time of, I think it was, as I said, they were trying to make money back, but making your layover slightly longer will really result in you paying less for your flight. So if you can manage to do that, that's another thing. If you've got the time as well, of course, if your work doesn't allow you to, if you've got family, kids, or if you're, as I said, if you're solo traveling, but if you're solo traveling on your own and leaving the kids behind, that's something to think about. If you have the time, take those long journeys. It will save you a lot of money. Baggage as well. Think about the baggage, because a lot of airlines, if they're budget airlines, they will charge you a baggage fee. You can find an airline that doesn't charge, it's part of the price deal anyway when it comes to your ticket. That's a great way of saving money. But with the baggage, try and travel light with it. If obviously the baggage is a one particular price for the kilos, then try and keep it below that amount. So if it's 23 kilos max and you're going to be charged at $50, keep it under 23 kilos, I would say. If you can travel as a carry-on, that's fantastic, but it depends on how long you're going away for. The length of time is really, really important. So if you need a lot of clothes and other outfits, etc., then you might need to take more than a carry-on. But think about that. Baggage is really, really important. That can save you a lot of money in the long run as well. Once you've arrived at your destination, transportation is a big thing. Over the years, I've saved myself, again, thousands of dollars because I've taken public transportation and instead of taking taxis. Taxis, again, depending on the country that you're in. If you're in Asia and you're a part of the world where taxis are generally cost effective, it's very cheap. But if you go into Europe, for example, or in the Americas, Canada, US, then you're going to be spending a lot of money. If you come to the UK, for example, London taxis, goodness me, very, very expensive. Try and use public transportation. That will save you a lot of money. Ditch the taxis if you can. And obviously if you know someone who lives out in the destination, maybe try and get them to pick you up, but I would definitely use public transportation. And another tip would be, if you can travel at night time, and if your location or destination is quite far, then overnight trains, overnight coaches is a great way of saving money on an accommodation for the night. And I've done that before actually, where I've traveled and I've had to go to a destination and I was going through with a coach, and it took like 7 hours, so it meant that I can sleep for 7 hours on the coach. So think about that when you're on the road, and you can save yourself a day's accommodation by just taking a public transportation. Accommodation, now this is really, really important, obviously, because you're going to be staying for a length of period and you want to make sure you're comfortable. And the app that I use is booking.com, and over the years I've become a Genius client, which has meant I saved myself a lot of money, because you get 20% off every single time you book. And that's really, really important for me, because it allows me to get an accommodation in a destination where it's going to be, I know it's going to be reliable, and the company is very reliable as well. And if anything goes wrong, you can contact booking.com and they'll be able to give you a refund, or they'll be able to give you some other perks and deals. And that's, over the years, has saved me a lot of money. That being said, if you aren't particularly interested in hotels, I've never stayed really in hostels before, because I've been able to, as I said at the beginning, my lifestyle has allowed me to book really nice hotels, lavish hotels, not lavish, but good hotels, because I've been able to manage my expenses. But if you aren't as savvy as me when it comes to living home, socializing and stuff, what you can do is something called Homestay. And I've done this before actually. When I went to Toronto, I went at a time when the Toronto International Film Festival was on. So all the hotels, every single one of them near the city of Toronto, was just astronomically expensive. And this allowed me to live with the host of the house or apartment and get the best of Toronto. And it saved me, I worked it out by the way, so for 7 nights, if I stayed during the Toronto International Film Festival period, it would have cost me $2,000, and that's not Canadian dollars, that's US dollars. Staying with the family, I think it was the mother and their son, it was $360 for the entire 7 days. So that was a massive save. So if you think about it, that's $1,600 I saved on accommodation. So if you can do homestay, if you can stay that way, I know Airbnb allows you to do a host, you can stay with the host. That's one way of doing things. Airbnbs, of course, are great. I've used Airbnb to save myself a lot of money as well, if accommodations through booking.com becomes expensive. But homestay for me is something, if you can do it that way, it's not roughing it out, it's not staying in hostels. I particularly cannot stay in a room with 10 people. I just can't. I need my own space. So this is a way of doing it, and you can go stay at someone's house. It's usually brilliant. The bed's fantastic, you get all the towels, they treat you like family, and that's really, really important as well. You get to get the vibe of what the location is like as well, so you get a bit of a culture of how they live their lives. And so that's something to think about if you can't do it through the hotels. When it comes to food, this is the biggest draw for me. I can travel around the world just to eat. Honestly, it's the most amazing feeling you can get. Eating different kind of cuisines can be very expensive around the world. Now, I've managed to budget this in. As I said, going back to my lifestyle at home, I know I can accommodate a certain amount of restaurants. I don't necessarily have everything planned to the T when it comes to eating out. It depends on what locals tell me, and I go based on what locals tell me, because sometimes they give you the best restaurants, and it's the most cost-effective restaurant that you can go to. If locals, I always say, are eating there, then you know that's a restaurant to go to, depending on the destination you go to. Now, this is a very, really important thing to think about. Destinations like Tunisia, where I've been to, Morocco, parts of the world where you can eat out like a king, is really, really something to think about. Because if you go to the UK, if you go to the US, anywhere in the US, it's going to be expensive regardless. If you can pick a destination where you know it's really, really cheap anyway, then you can eat out at any restaurant. You don't necessarily need to budget everything in. But if you are going to Europe, for example, I remember when I went to Iceland, everything over there was really expensive. So I was able to accommodate things like going to grocery stores for lunch, buying a sandwich. That's something to think of. Or sometimes you can go fasting, have breakfast if it's included in your... And that's the thing, by the way, as well, when it comes to accommodation. If you book a hotel, make sure there's breakfast included. If you're staying in homestays, you can get the breakfast with the homestays. But if you can eat a big breakfast, maybe skip lunch, or not eat too much anyway for lunchtime, maybe buy a sandwich from a grocery store, that will save you a lot of money. Then you can pick and choose certain types of restaurant to go to throughout your stay. And I've done this as well, where when I've done big trips, I've managed to save myself a lot of money throughout the week and gone to like a really top restaurant at the end of it. But there's like really, really good restaurants to go to throughout. And I'm sure if you talk to the locals, my advice to you is to talk to the locals, because they will tell you the best spots to go to, where to save yourself a lot of money. And you can save yourself a lot of money as well, again, destination wise, if you go out and eat in the streets. Street food is something that I always tend to do. If you can stomach it, I say go to street foods stalls, because they're the best places you can have your meal, and you'll save yourself a lot of money. Think about that when it comes to food throughout your stay, and I'm telling you, you'll save yourself a lot of money. And then you can treat yourself towards the end of your trip and go to a really fancy restaurant. That's what I tend to do. Activities and attractions, that's what we travel for. There are destinations where I've gone to where I have to spend a lot of money. Rockefeller Center, going up that to see the skyline of New York. When I went to Peru to see the Machu Picchu, I did the trek. That's all going to cost. But saying all that, if you can get into things like walking or seeing the sunset, or walking up to a destination, or walking up to a landmark, I should say, sorry, and seeing a skyline, that is going to save you a lot of money. It's how you live your life, again, in the UK or in the US or in Europe. That is going to be the big selling point to you when it comes to an attraction. Now, over the years, I love sunsets. So for me, that's an activity. So if I can find a spot where it's not going to cost me anything to go see a sunset, that is an amazing thing to do. You're going to save yourself a lot of money and you're going to enjoy it. And I've photographed so many sunsets over the years, and not just sunsets, by the way. You can do whatever you think will be going to the park, sitting at the park and just relaxing there. That's something to do. Buying food from the grocery store and sitting there and eating your dinner, perhaps. You can go to gardens, beaches, which you can enjoy for free. Sometimes, obviously, beaches will have certain deck chairs that you may have to pay. Many museums do offer a free admission, so look at that. And I think also around the world, there's certain landmarks, like for example, when I went to Greece and I was in Athens, I wanted to go see the Acropolis. If I bought a ticket just for the Acropolis, it would have cost me something like 17 euros at the time when I went. However, if I bought this package deal where it included other museums, other landmarks, it would cost me 25 euros. So it made sense for me to pay 25 euros instead of paying out X amount of money for each one of the museums and location that I was going to. So think about that. You can find certain deals on the tourism websites. So if you go on the city's website or the country's website, so if it's London, look at the London tourism website, you'll be able to find deals on there. I think the other thing also to think about is like local events, festivals. Those usually sometimes don't cost you anything to go to. And if you, again, once you're in and around the destination, you might be able to find out what's going on. I remember when I was in Laos, there was a free film night, and I went to it and it was amazing and it didn't cost me anything. And there was another one when I was in Laos as well. We were watching one of the superhero movies in a bar. You buy yourself a drink, and again, there was people there sitting with you. That's something to enjoy, and you get a feel of the culture, and it's lively as well. And so it doesn't have to necessarily just be attractions that you have to go to a museum, etc. Sunsets, as I said, walking, going to the beach, those are ways of saving yourself a lot of money, I would say. And I think that's a really key thing to think about. When it comes to my cell coverage, it's really important to make sure I have data. My network here in the UK allows me to travel to 70 or 80 different destinations, and I can travel without having to worry about getting an eSIM or without getting a physical SIM. Over the years though, I've been using the Wi-Fi in destinations, but I've noticed actually post-pandemic that a lot of places don't seem to have those Wi-Fi's anymore, so I've had to go and rely on Airalo. Airalo is an app that you can buy local tariffs on, and it's really cost effective, and you can get data. You can buy, depending on how long you're going to be there, you can buy data for a certain amount of gigs, and I use it as an emergency. I'm not going to be using it to watch films or be talking on video for a long while. I just use it as an emergency to text, etc. And obviously when you get back to your hotel, or if you're in a place where there's Wi-Fi, you can connect to the Wi-Fi. So I use it as an emergency. I think it's really important to have, because just recently I spoke to a friend, and they went and spent something like $200-300 for like a 5-day trip, and I was like, well, why did you spend that much? Because, well, I needed the network and I needed data, so I just spent it. It's like, you could have saved yourself a good $200-300 if you bought the eSIM. So Airalo is definitely the app for me, and you can take the code that I provide to save yourself money. If you've never used it before, you can save yourself $3 to begin with, and it's a fantastic app to use. I've definitely saved myself a lot of money. The other thing to remember is you're connected. Just in case something goes wrong, you've got data coverage, and you can connect back to your loved ones or friends and let them know you're okay. Now, when it comes to money, do I take physical money with me or do I use my card? In the UK, I'm very fortunate. We do have banks that do facilitate when it comes to spending money, and it doesn't charge you a commission. A lot of countries I know doesn't allow that. So if you are going to take money with you, I would say take it and convert it when you're away in your destination, because you're going to get a better rate than if you do it in your own country. That's what I would say. Saying that though, there is an bank app that I've found out internationally that you can use, and you can use a physical card or you can use it through your app, and it's called Wise, and it covers countries all around the world, and you can spend it in their currency. It's one of the best apps you could use, best banks you could use. It saved so many people so much money because their banks in their home country doesn't allow that, and it's a great way to facilitate yourself. Here's a quick recap on what we've gone through today. Budget travel starts at home, sites to book your flights, public transportation, affordable accommodations, food and activities, what banks to use, and staying connected on the go. As you can see, traveling on a budget is possible, specifically if you're traveling solo. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. You can find me on all my social media at Shebs the Wanderer. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Feel free to leave a comment for this presentation. I'll be able to answer them for you. If you follow these tips, you can stretch your travel out. And as I have done over the years, it's been the most amazing experience. It's changed my life. My perspective on life has completely changed by solo traveling, because I've met so many people around the world, and that's made me a better person. And I've done it all on a budget as well. With 20 years of solo traveling and expert in saving money, why not get in touch for a free coaching session? You can get in touch off the back of this for a free half-hour mentoring session worth $80. I've guided many by giving them the confidence to succeed in their area or start a career in travel. What are you waiting for?